Hello, and welcome to a video that I'd like to call What I Learned Working in the Animation Industry. This is going to be a bit of an informal talk about the mistakes that I made and the lessons I've taken away as a young adult and young artist trying to work in the corporate world, and what you can hopefully take away as you go through similar experiences. Great, my laundry's done. Be right back. Section 1, the craft. Firstly, one of the most important things that you can do is to know the craft. Know animation. Go to school for it, read books about it, be interested in it, and have an intrinsic desire to learn more about the craft. I think most of my experience was being sort of stuck focusing on details like this and never really stepping back and having a broader picture sense of the stuff that I was doing. So I really struggled with learning the craft, and then if I didn't know things, I also wasn't really asking questions, both because I was being a bit proud, and also I think deep down I knew that I didn't want to know the answers to the questions that I had because I didn't care. I didn't really want to learn the things about animation. A very toxic combination. Next, I'll say you have to love animation, not necessarily just working on your own projects. Being in animation requires that you work on other people's stuff and that you put a lot of time into other people's ideas. I think it's pretty common for a lot of artists and animators to have their own ideas of what they want to work on and what they would do if they wanted to pitch a show or direct a show themselves. But the thing that I sort of kept holding on to was all of my early experiences. The majority of my experience was freelance, but it was also working on my own projects. Most of the time, if I was working on something for somebody else, I would get bored or I wouldn't complete it or things like that. So maybe those could have been early signifiers that I wouldn't be super great at doing work for other people, but that's the tea, sis. Next thing I'll say is do the job. If you can't do the job, then try to move into something else while you're still in that company. Be very clear about your intentions while you're still in that company, and keep trying to do a good job with the thing that you're doing. Because you never know. You never know if it'll work out by the end, and you want to have something to show for it when you're done. In my experience, I wanted to try moving into storyboards, but then I also waffled a lot and wasn't sure about doing effects or maybe doing compositing and stuff like that. And I think because I waffled, I never really committed to sort of making any test projects or even completing tests for the storyboarding division. And that was no good. That did not work out very well. I was very tired. I did not realize how much I was struggling, I think. This next one is very practical, and it is do the difficult stuff earlier in the day. You'll be glad that you got it over with, and later in the day, you can probably get some feedback on whatever you accomplished at the earlier point in the day. As you get later into the day, you will probably be tired and less able to focus, and it's probably the best time to do smaller chunks that can be easily divided up as opposed to something you want to devote 3, 4, 5 hours to. The next point is, if you're not a higher up, if you're not a supervisor, or if you're not a director or something, don't really worry about giving notes to your coworkers unless they really, really want it. I find that it's not your job, and it can get kind of annoying if someone's over your shoulder and you're like, excuse me? And they're giving you notes on stuff, or if I'm giving notes on someone else's stuff. It just takes a lot of time, and I could be wrong, You get the job that you have the qualifications for, so it should be pretty much accepted that if you're a supervisor or director, you have the credentials to give specific notes about the show that you're working on, or the shot that you're on specifically. Speaking of shots, save your shot numbers. Whatever shots that you're working on through the course of the show, they will all start to blend together. You're going to forget what you worked on, and after a few months, you'll ask yourself, did I do anything on this show? It's really amazing how much it can bleed together, especially if you're on post revisions, because the nature of post revisions is that you jump around from lots of different shots to shots. and you don't know necessarily if you had that much of a hand in certain things. It is important that they do approve that you actually worked on the things that you say you're working on, so keep that in mind. I made that mistake pretty recently. I know the shots that I worked on, and I could say that I've worked on this internally, but I don't really have the approval, the piece of approval from someone in my company saying that these exact shots are what I worked on. So it's a bit of an honor system thing. So I gotta be careful. Next point is decorate your workspace. I should have put this at the top. So there was something about the state I was in while I was working at this company that was preventing me from making a pretty space to work in. I also got really into gray shirts. I don't know if that's, whatever came first. Like, was I depressed and then I kept working, or did I keep working and then that made me depressed, so then I got gray shirts? But it can create a feedback loop because I was not really wearing colorful clothing, and honestly, I'm doing fine today. I just happened to pick up this gray shirt. Decorating your workspace is super important because you're gonna be there at least 40 hours a week if you're there full time, and you wanna be surrounded by stuff that inspires you and stuff that makes you feel comfortable and that's about it. The next point is chat with your coworkers. I don't know what my deal was, and I hope I do better about this in the future, because I think at the time I was worried that I wasn't doing a good job, and that if I talked to people for too long, they would find out that I wasn't doing a good job, and then they would judge me for it and decide not to be my friend. I think that was the train of thought that I was going through, and it's not accurate. If you want to chat with people, you will sort of naturally discover, if you just keep asking each other questions, the common interests you might have. And really, the common interest shouldn't be that you just want to work on stuff with each other. I think a lot of friendship is just ignoring, is just enjoying each other's company. If you're feeling like, oh, I'm not really clicking with this person, that's fine. There are lots of people in a company, and you can make the friends that you want to make. I think having a good little friend group to spend your time with is amazing for your mental health and your sanity while you're at this whatever job you're at. So if I could say this to my younger self, you have nothing left to prove. You got the job. Just talk with people about life. You don't need to talk to them about the craft or about your ambitions and all of this stuff. It can be off-putting. This next point is about commiserating. You gotta be careful with commiserating, because on the one hand, work is stressful, personalities clash, it can be hard to meet your deadlines and that sort of stuff, and that's pretty normal. And on the other hand, it can really start to weigh down on group morale if everyone feels bad about the work they're doing. There's a high likelihood that if you're working on something for children or toddlers, then you're not really gonna feel super connected to the work you're doing, and it is what it is. At the same time, if you continue to talk down about the project you're doing, not only will you create a culture that is discouraging for people, you'll start to internalize those negative statements, and you'll keep thinking maybe in your head, maybe I don't like this. Maybe this work is beneath me. And those aren't really helpful thoughts. I think the best thing that you can do is to do a good job, and I think doing that good job says better things about you in the future than saying right now, I'm better than this work. Are you better than this work? I'm saying this to myself in the past. If you were better than this work, maybe you would have a different job, or maybe you would get hired for something higher up. If you're not in those higher positions, then maybe do a really good job with what you're given, and then later down the line, you can earn a higher place in a company. How about that? This is the kind of stuff that no one was saying to me while I was early on in the industry. I was just having a bad attitude, but I also wasn't really honest about my difficulties, so I don't know that anyone really knew to say these things to me. It's also just this people got their own shit going on. They're not gonna start mentoring someone or say something confrontational to someone if it makes their life a little more difficult, or if I then take it the wrong way, and whatever, that's my own shit, you know? The next section, self-care and mental health. My favy. First point, very bare bones. Eat healthy, drink water, stay active, and be very cautious with caffeine. Pretty simple. Oh, and get sleep. Make sure to rest. Ooh, these things are like essential to being a person, and I would say maybe 40%, 50% of people in the animation industry are forgetting to do at least one of these things. And if you want to have stamina at any stage of your life, you need to be doing these basic things to get your vitamins and minerals, rest, have water, and, avoid getting sick. Please do the bare minimum and take care of your body, because taking care of your body will also take care of your mind and help you do a better job. This next point is almost as important as that first one. If you're feeling very low, if you're feeling anxious or depressed, and it doesn't even feel related to the work, or even if it does feel related to the work, if you feel bad, like if you don't look forward to going to work, if you don't look forward to submitting things, if you don't like talking to people, all that sort of stuff, get help. Get therapy, talk to someone, and by Jove, you will thank yourself within half a year or a year. At the very least. It's a very difficult process, and it requires you being very honest with yourself and honest with your therapist. But if you can do that stuff, you will find over time that trudging through that muck is probably one of the most rewarding things that you can do with your time, let alone your effort. The next point is, try not to make extra work for yourself outside of the job. It's a full-time commitment. It takes a lot, and if you can help it, put your effort into the thing that you're being paid for and that you go to day in and day out to try to be paid to do a good job at it. You said you were going to do the job, so do the job. Again, talking to my younger self. I think a big mistake that I made was telling myself that I would do this job in the daytime and then in the evening would be when I got my real work done. Do you know what that does to someone's mental health? It tells them that all of the time they're spending in the day is not valuable, and that maybe as a person they're not valuable for putting that much time into something in the daytime. So later on in the period that I was at this company, I made a lot of mistakes and just did my own personal work on their computers, on their dollar. And I'm surprised no one caught me and no one said anything about it. Or maybe they did notice and they kept track of the low numbers that I started to turn out later on in the contract, and I don't know, maybe I was blacklisted. So yeah, extra projects, it's tough, because if you want to be an independent creator, you should probably just put a lot of time into being an independent creator. It's not really going to help you to try to have a career as a for-hire artist for other people's projects and try to do this independent creative stuff. I think if you can do one of them part-time and then do the other part-time, that's the best solution. You can't really do two full-time things and have the juice to do a good job at both of those things, in my experience. I couldn't do it. It was tough, man. Or woman, or person. And we're almost done. The next point is, when you're listening to stuff in the background, it should be interesting or relaxing. The general vibe that I think you want to create for yourself, and you'll discover this along the way, is that you want your work experience to be a bit more pleasant, but you don't want to distract yourself from the work that you're doing. If you're distracting yourself from the work that you're doing, then that's sort of a sign that you should probably make some changes, see the earlier chunk of the video. And along those lines, just be comfortable. If it's a cold workspace or if it's a hot workspace, dress accordingly. Dress well, but also dress comfortably. Get a comfortable seat if you don't have one. These little things, all of the things I've talked about really add up and inform how I'm going to approach my future projects in the future. So hopefully this is helpful. The last point I will make is the following: live your life. We work to live. We don't live to work. It's very easy to get mixed up as artists and think that, oh, well, if I have a job and I want to do a good job, this should be the only thing that I'm doing, and this is my value as a human being. And it's not true. Your value as a human being is inherent. It is not something completely tied to the work that you're doing. And this is an ongoing lesson for myself that I have to keep reminding myself as I've been struggling to find work over this past year. I'm not gonna cry. I'm just in the moment. You know deep down if the job that you're doing is the job you want to keep doing. In my case, I knew a couple months in to working in the animation industry that I didn't really want to stick it out. I knew that I didn't want to make a career out of it. I was thinking about storyboards even then, and now I'm working on comics, which is sort of similar. Your day-to-day overall, or your week-to-week, sure, it will be challenging, but generally you want to say, was today a good day? Did I have a nice day? I think it can be very easy to romanticize what a nice day is, especially if people aren't really familiar with like how happiness works or how satisfaction works. But to me, a nice day is working on something that I'm interested in, with any luck, getting paid for it, having a bit of a chat here and there with the people I'm working with, hitting all my self-care points, and then coming home and relaxing after 8 or 9 hours at whatever thing I was working at. You know, it's pretty simple, but I think it can be really hard for artists to find that for whatever reason. I definitely struggled to find that because I just got really wrapped up in a lot of various ego problems. Just a young person trying to make a name for themselves and being very confused about how to do it. It's also difficult because I've been self-taught. Most of the time I put into my personal education was in animation, but it was for stick figure animation and for bouncy animatics, basically. I sort of just got mixed up when I said I wanted to be in animation. And we'll see. I'm looking at editing work because I've always liked editing, and if I need to, I'll go to school for it. And then if I can say, you know, I committed 2 or 3 years to schooling for this, hire me, great. That's where I'm at, right? That's where I'm at right now, because it's been about a year of trying to find work in illustration or whatever, but my resume doesn't really sell people on it. And I also don't want to work on character animation anymore. So, thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. What's the word? I hope there's a bit of schadenfreude, a bit of self-satisfaction if you've never had these issues, but if you have had these issues, I empathize. It is really, really tough to sort of work your way through this stuff, and I wish you all the luck in the world. Talk to people about what you're going through, because I think you'll be surprised at the wisdom that people can have if you just ask them good questions. So, thanks again for listening, and see you soon. I hope you enjoy life.